Hello everyone and welcome to the EGXW Info Group of Twitter accounts YouTube channel. Today's video is going to be about radio scanners. So we get loads of questions asking about radio scanners. What are they? How do they work? How do I use one? Do I need one? Etc, etc. And I'll hopefully answer your questions in this video. So I've written a few notes and we'll dig right in. So first of all, I'll mention the legalities of scanning. Now it depends what you listen to on a scanner about the legalities. It's a bit of a complicated area of law and don't profess to be a legal expert. So what I would say is it's your own choice to what you listen to in the scanner, and you need to be aware of the legalities of scanning. So before you go into it, do a bit of research and be happy with what you are doing. It is down to you. And for the rest of this video, I won't touch on the legalities of listening to various things. I will, however, say that scanner use is very prevalent. If you've ever been to an air show, you probably see all the people on the flight line, and some of the things you'll notice are big cameras with big lenses, and invariably they'll have a scanner hooked onto the belt and maybe a pair of earphones in or something like that. If you go to the fence line at any airbase, you'll probably find 50% of people there have got scanners, so it is quite prevalent. However, like I say, for the legalities, I'll leave that down to you and we'll continue this video. So what is a scanner? So a scanner is a receive-only radio, and the scanning element is how it scans through and detects radio transmissions. And generally speaking, when it detects a radio transmission, it will stop scanning different frequencies and let you listen to what is being said, and then once that transmission ends, it will move on and continue scanning. So we'll start with the radio spectrum. Now this is for the United States. I couldn't find one for the UK. However, for the purposes of this video, it'll be absolutely fine. And it's just to demonstrate here, it starts off at 0 kilohertz and goes right up to 300 gigahertz here. And you can see this radio spectrum of all the different electromagnetic waves flying through our atmosphere above our heads right now is split into various sections depending on their frequency. And if I zoom in, you've got lots of different things. You see here radio navigation, maritime mobile, broadcasting, you've got amateur radio, radio navigation again, TV will be in there, mobile phones are in there, basically anything that uses radio waves for communication will be in this radio spectrum. Now, frequencies are the frequency in which a radio wave oscillates in. And this is in hertz, so the amount that's one oscillation per second is 1 hertz. So 50 hertz would be 50 oscillations a second. And some terminology that would be helpful in describing this is handy little graphic here. We refer to kilohertz, and all that means is 1000 hertz, a megahertz, which is 1,000,000 hertz, and a gigahertz, which is 1,000,000,000 hertz. So we're going to be really focusing kilohertz, megahertz, gigahertz. So it's just a way of expressing, using language for large numbers. So that's hertz. So airband scanning frequency ranges. So we've talked about that radio spectrum again. Now we're focusing on the airband because that's what we're all about. We're about aircraft, military aircraft mainly. And the parts of the spectrum that are going to be interesting for you are these parts here. So we have VHF low band, which is 30 to 87.975 megahertz. VHF airband, which is 108 to 137, and UHF airband, 225 to basically 400 megahertz. There is also HF, which I've put in the wrong column down there. So the VHF low band tend to be military users, and it tends to be quite infrequent military users. So you don't need VHF low band to enjoy scanning, because 90% of what you listen to, or more, maybe up to 99, won't be in that VHF low band. VHF airband, now this is the civil portion of the airband. So all your civil aircraft, all your airliners and general aviation flights will generally have only VHF radios. Now, where does that come into our military aviation hobby? Well, for compatibility, military airfields will have VHF frequencies in the VHF airband portion, because with UHF airband, these are military users. Okay, so most civil aircraft will not have UHF airbands, but military aircraft will have VHF and UHF radios. So this is why these two portions here, the VHF airband and the UHF airband, are going to be the ones that you need to focus on when learning to use a scanner. Okay. HF. Now HF is the lower frequency range, and again military users live out there. Now the features, when we go talking about like VHF low band, VHF airband and UHF airband, VHF and UHF are considered line of sight signals, so you can only receive those if you're within line of sight of the antenna that's transmitting those signals. So if there's a hill between you and the airbase you're listening to, that's going to be a problem. So generally speaking, they're line of sight. HF comes into it because those lower frequencies, it's not considered necessarily line of sight communication. And what will happen is you will be receiving signals that are bounced off the atmospheric layers higher in the sky. So the advantage of HF is a much longer range. However, that comes with a few problems. It is very weather dependent, and because they're low frequencies, you need quite big antennas to listen to them. So some scanners will scan in the HF airband. However, as I say, most of the stuff you're listening to is going to be in the VHF airband and the UHF airband. Now, inside these areas of the spectrum, you get various channels allocated to certain frequencies. And in days gone by, those channels were separated by 25 kilohertz. And that is still the case with UHF airband. However, it's worth noting that because of the sheer number of users in the VHF airband, they have tightened this spacing, and they now are rolling out frequencies allocated by 8.33 kilohertz spacing. So you get more channels for your given frequency allocation there. And that will be important later. So another thing that's worth talking about is modulation, and this is very much about how the information is actually transported in these radio waves. And there's two main modes, AM and FM. AM stands for amplitude modulation, and basically the information contained within that radio wave is contained within its amplitude, basically its height. And then FM, the information within that transmission is contained in frequency shift. So where that's important is scanners will have these bands, and you need to know what modulation everything's on. Now, for 98% of the frequencies you're going to be listening to on a scanner, so VHF airband and UHF airband, we're going to be talking about the AM mode. Now, The rest of that 2% will be probably sat in the FM modulation. So it's important to have that function, even though 98% of it is going to be AM. It's also worth noting sometimes they split these FM down to narrowband FM and wideband FM. So narrowband FM is anything to do with voice really, and wideband FM is pretty much only used for, you know, your commercial radio. When they need to give out a better quality signal, they need to occupy a bit more space to get all your music through and hear the music in stereo, for example. With voice, you don't need that width to your transmission, so narrowband is absolutely fine. Whereas if you want to listen to your classical music and hear all the elements of the orchestra, you want a wider band. So wideband FM, we're not going to be concerned about when we're talking about Airband. We're going to be 98% of the time talking about AM and a couple of percent time talking about FM. But it's important just to understand what they mean, because if you start listening to an AM signal and FM, you won't be able to tell what it's saying. It's going to be a bit garbled and extremely quiet. So it's important that that modulation is just set right and you know what they are in your scanner. Okay, squelch. Generally, there'll be two buttons on top of the scanner, volume and squelch, because they're the two most important things. Volume, I think we all know what volume is. Now, squelch, on any frequency, there is background noise, and it's that hissing. You know, when you flick on a TV, the old analog TVs, and you see that black and white stuff all over, that black and white mess all over, fuzziness, that is the background noise on that frequency. Now, we don't need to hear that background noise, so what a squelch is just a filter to filter out that background noise. And the right setting for your squelch is enough squelch that that background noise is filtered out. You don't want to go any higher than that, because that can start cutting out other signals. And it's important to note that depending on what frequency you're listening to, the noise on that frequency might be a little bit more than other frequencies. So you're going to have to set your squelch according to what audio it filters out on all the frequencies you're going to be listening to. Because if something breaks that squelch, your scanner's going to stop thinking it's a transmission. And it's not going to continue scanning. It's just going to broadcast that noise right into your ear hole, which isn't good for anyone. So that's what squelch is. A filter to filter out that background noise. Memories. Okay, so when we're scanning, like I said, we're constantly checking different frequencies for activity. And there's various ways you can do that. One thing you can do is say to your scanner, okay, I want you to just search the whole of that VHF airband. And it will search that area, that portion of the spectrum, and will stop on activity absolutely fine. But it's going to take a long time, because scanners have different speeds. Now, this depends on the specification of your scanner, and an average sort of speed is 100 channels a second. So it's going to search 100 different frequencies every second. Now, when we're talking about a piece of spectrum that big, and we're talking it's divided by 8.33 kilohertz, there's a lot of channels in that portion of the spectrum. Okay, so your scanner is going to be searching a heck of a lot of frequencies, and it's going to take a long time. So what we use is memories. Now, they are allocations of known frequencies, so frequencies we already know what they are. And your scanner most of the time will be set in this mode to only scan these known frequencies, because there is no point in scanning the whole of the VHF airband when you're an airport or an airfield and you know what frequencies they are working on. So that is why memories are important. And like I say, that is going to be the most common way you use your scanner. Yes, there are times when it can be useful to search the whole of the portions of the spectrums, but most of the time you're going to be searching your memories. Okay, so where to get frequencies? Now, one of the things with frequency lists are a lot of them, if you type in, I don't know, Coningsby frequencies into Google, it's going to fetch you a load of websites, but a lot of those websites are going to be old information. Frequencies do change depending when they're allocated. Now, recently we've had, like, as I mentioned before, the change in spacing of the VHF portion of the Airband to be spaced by 8.33 kilohertz. Now, because of the rollout that's happening over a number of years, it means that frequencies from a few years ago in that proportion of the spectrum are quite out of date. So it's going to be important for you to get frequencies which have happened in the later stages of that 8.33 kilohertz rollout. So that's one reason you want your frequencies to be up to date. Another reason is in the UK in December 2019, the Ministry of Defence changed a lot of their UHF frequency allocations. Okay, so they took away the old frequencies and allocated places new frequencies, and that happened in December 2019. And to be honest, I can't remember that when that last happened. It's been so long. So a key date there is December 2019. You want to make sure that your UHF frequencies, so your military frequencies, are up to date and have been updated after December 2019. So I'll write in there December 2019. So there's two reasons why you want to make sure whatever frequencies you are using are up to date. And that is the old website warning. There's a lot of websites out there where people have been helpful, yes, in 2005 by listing the frequencies for the local airfield, and you might think, oh great, I found a load of Coningsby frequencies here, I'll bang them into my scanner, program them in, and then you'll go to Coningsby and you'll hear nothing. And that is because they've been updated, they've changed. So a warning about visiting old websites. If you find a website with frequencies on it, try and find somewhere on there that assures you that these are up-to-date frequencies. Look for a date on that website. Okay, so there are official sources of frequencies. Now, the AIP, the Aeronautical Information Publication, I believe it stands for. Now, there's a civil AAP and a military AAP, and these are the manuals of everything that happens in the sky, how they regulate everything. And these manuals contain a lot of information that you're not going to understand unless you're really into flying or listening to scanners, okay? But they do contain the most accurate source of frequencies. So we have the civil AIP. I'll just bring up the old Tinterweb. So you have the civil AIP that you can register an account for on the NATS website. And in there, like I said, this is a big Bible almost of all the flying things. But you can go into, say, the aerodrome section, part 3, and we'll look for, well, let's pick the first one. So this brings up the textual information about that airfield, and then somewhere on there, here we are, you have your frequencies. So it tells you that Aberdeen approach is on 119.055 megahertz, and there's your frequency. Ground is on 121.785 megahertz. Tower, etc. Now this AIP is kept up to date constantly, and the renewal cycle, I believe, is every 6 months. So this is going to be your most accurate place to get your frequencies from, but it's not going to be easy to search through, especially if you're trying to program all your airfields, you're starting to listen to aviation higher up. It's not easy, but like I said, if you're in doubt about any frequency, this is the source you want to refer to. Okay, and as with everything, there's a civil side and a military side, and the military AIP is now published online as well. So again, you can go to, and you want to be the AD section, the aerodrome section. Again, go to aerodromes. So I've been using Collins as an example for it. You've got all your charts here, so you can have a look at your taxi charts and everything like that, and everything's nice and up to date. But if we go back, we can go textual data. And scrolly. There we are. So now these are highlighted in blue because they've recently changed. Like I said, December 2019, new frequencies came out. So again, you've got your approach frequencies, 234, 675, 362, and they need more frequencies because, you know, they're a busy place. And if they've got lots of inbounds, they might want to give the first lot that frequency, the second lot that frequency, third lot that frequency, to keep the frequencies only used for what they're required to. So different frequencies. Now, right, pop back to my notes. So, like I say, they're the official sources. Also on our website, which I haven't preloaded, I will try and keep you as up to date as I can with frequencies. However, it can be a lot of work. So I think, for example, under Conisbee say frequencies at the minute, I'm saying that at the moment, post 2019 changes, I can't do all the airfields at the minute. So just for now, I have this PDF, and it's, you know, Waddington, Conisbee, Scampton, Cranwell, the bases that we cover, and they're there in a handy format. So you can use our website, and I will try and update the frequencies for the rest of the UK, but that's a lot of work. So that's another place to get frequencies. Now there are also community efforts. Okay, so one thing with community efforts is it's down to the person who submitted that frequency to how it's described. And there's a lot of people in this hobby with a wide range of experiences, and if you're going to contribute to a community effort, you know, you've got the right idea, you want to help fellow users, but because of that varying knowledge base, people don't always know what they're listening to, and don't always know what I call the designations for the frequency, what the designations are, because they're not exactly sure what they're hearing. And there's a few traps, certainly in military airband, where you think you're actually hearing one thing and you're not. So it's only as good as the person that's recorded the frequency. However, there's one place here, the UK Airband Frequency Guide by Rick King, and I think I've got that preloaded in my browser on Facebook. Okay, now what Rick's done is he's got as much information as he can publicly from like the military AIP and the civil AIP, and combined that with user submitted frequencies. Okay, so it's not going to be 100% accurate, but it's going to be pretty close. Okay, and T-Cells, is one of the only publishers now of a book. We used to have the old frequencies and call signs book. They've gone out of date now. Nobody. Here you go. Look, let's have a look. 15 quid. There you go. So for 15 quid, you can buy this book and get it posted out to you, and it's also available on Amazon and eBay as well. But save him some fees and go direct if you can. So that's his website. There's the address up here, and that's, you know, a 2020 book of frequencies, 15 quid. Decent value. Right, back to my notes. You've also got some other community efforts like mill scanners. Now they go through various stages of, sometimes you've got to submit so many to get access to the database. Sometimes it's public, and to be honest, I can't keep up with it, and I don't particularly like the frequencies there because the designations are a bit all over the place, but that is another source. Fighter Control, the forums at Fighter Control, a lot of the users there try to keep an updated frequency list for local airfields, so that's another good place to check. And then Facebook groups. There are hundreds of Facebook groups. Every day someone sets a new up a new Facebook group for the same blooming subject. However, there are some very useful ones, more popular ones out there. If you check the files section in a lot of these groups, they have their frequency lists in there. So check the file section of your Facebook groups for the airfields. What's this one to? Speed of scanning. So when we start to look at what scanners we get, like I said, speed is quite important, and that can sometimes vary. That's one specification you need to bear in mind. I think some of mine are like 200 channels a second. I can't remember what my main one is now. I know it's lower than that, but so other functions. Now, with the age of technology, as things progress, computer programming. This is probably the best function I found. In the old days, say if you can remember the Tandy radio, you used to go down to Tandy, get your old 300 quid scanner, and you used to get the top one. You know, it used to be about 300 quid, didn't it? And for your frequencies, it'd have. I mean, my base scanner's 1,000 frequencies, and you're programming them in, and you'd have to type on the keyboard all your frequencies, you know, channel 1 I want 259.6, enter. Channel 2 I want, you know, and you'd have to go in and use the keypad on the front. And for 1,000 memories, I'm surprised these keyboards didn't wear out, because you're constantly typing. And some of the more advanced hand programmed scanners have alpha tagging, which is where you can assign a label to it. And I used to have to do that. Do you remember the old mobile phones before predictive text, where you used to, like, for the letter C, you had to press like 2-3 times or something? That's how you program in these labels to your frequencies. So you imagine how long 1,000 dummy memories are if you're doing all this typing on this keypad, and then you've got to do your label as well in your old text message. Oh, it was awful. Now that all changed with computer programming, and I changed my scanners over to computer programming a long time ago, and that just lets you type in as easy as here with your frequencies. And some programs will even let you copy and paste frequencies from like Excel spreadsheets and things like that. So it has made organizing your frequencies so much more simple. So if you can, go for a scanner that can be computer programmed. And there's various other functions that can come with that, like computer control, recording, loads of other facilities. But at the very least, try and get a scanner that's programmable via a computer. And you're going to need a USB cable and a little bit of knowledge. That's a given. But generally, you'll get on okay. Now, memory logic. This one. So in the older days, scanners used to divide those frequencies into banks. So I'll take what I've got a Uniden, not a Uniden, a Realistic Pro 2042. Used to be the top base scanner available at Tandy, and that had 1,000 channels on it. And to subdivide those, you'd have 10 banks. So it's basically 10 banks of 100 channels. And then you can choose just to scan bank 1. So you scan up to your 100 channels, whatever you've programmed in there. So you could have, like, bank 1 could be Coningsby, bank 2 could be Waddington, bank 3 could be Cranwell. And that's how you used to do it. And the majority of scanners out there still work on these 10 bank principle. The handheld version of that, the old 300 quid handheld Pro, or what we got here, Pro 62 or something like that, that had like 200 channels, and it had 10 banks, so you get 20 channels in a bank. So that's how that works. And you rock up at your airfield and you just activate the bank of the airfield that you're at, and off you go. And you deactivate, that's important, deactivate the banks of the airfields you're not at, because there's no point in scanning 1,000 channels that airport's 200 miles away, because it's just going to take time on that scan. Remember your scan speed, it's going to only be able to search whatever speed that scanner is capable of searching. Now, the newer ones, the Uniden, have a great system. It's more complicated, and this is where a lot of people fall down, is not understanding the memory logic of these scanners. The Uniden scanners have, instead of having up to so many channels allocated per bank, they have systems, and you can have like 100 systems, and then inside those systems you can have like 10 groups. So say you wanted to do every airfield in the country, you're going to need like 99 systems. And for the advanced scanner user, it's going to be better for them, because your total channels, I think, Uniden 15X has got 2,000. Oh no, it's not. It's got 9,000 channels, something like that. You don't want to order 9,000 channels in 10 banks, because that's 900 plumbing channels a bank here. So they dynamically allocate to systems and groups. So you could have all your 9,000 in one system and group if you want. Now, this comes in handy because you can subdivide all your frequencies to specific functions, specific airfields, and only scan what you need to scan. It speeds up your scan. Like I say, for basic users, it's hard to get your head around their architecture, and I haven't done a great explanation of it. And a lot of users do fall down with getting their head around this systems and group architecture. But for advanced users, they can get their head around that architecture. It's a really good tool. So memory logic is one thing to consider. Delay times, that's sort of the time before the scanner resumes scanning after a transmission. So sometimes you'll find that if you want to hear both sides of the conversation, there'll be a little gap between the transmissions, and if your delay time's too short, it's going to move on, start scanning other frequencies, and it's going to be, depending on your speed of your scanner, another second before it gets around to getting back to that conversation. So your delay times are important, and you can set them as small or as much as you want in some of these scanners. Some of them are fixed, so delay times is another function you're going to want to consider. Priority. So if one frequency is talking on one frequency, but on your priority frequency someone shouts up, it will switch to your priority. Now, the way it does that is by really quickly checking your priority signal during your transmission. So I have it off, because when I'm listening to stuff, I don't want it quickly flicking to my priority channel to check for activity, because in that split second I might miss something very important, like a couple of numbers being said or something like that. And this is where true dual channel monitoring comes through. Most radio scanners only have one tuner, so it can only listen to one thing at a time, no matter what function it's on. It only listens to one thing at one time. But dual tuners can be, on the more expensive scanners, can be quite useful, because it can keep an eye on activity properly by using the second tuner. Okay, so you've got your primary tuner listening to what you want to do, and your secondary tuner's off listening to something totally different. When that's active, it can let you know. So, like I say, priorities is the cheap way of doing it, where the scanner quickly checks another frequency using its main tuner. But dual tuner monitoring is the true function. Alerts. So some of these, say there's a particular frequency, like I said, with your priorities, for example, you can set a little alert, so it'll go beep beep when that frequency goes off, which is can be handy in certain circumstances. And then variable delay times I've written there, which I've already discussed. Cheaper way. There is a cheaper way of scanning, or getting into scanning, if you've got some good computing knowledge. You can purchase I call it the dongle, and I really should have preloaded this, shouldn't I? And I'm going to show myself right up here, because I'm searching for my dongles. Down here, dongle. Let's get you a picture of a dongle. So we primarily use these for aircraft tracking, but there is another use for dongles. There we are, little USB thing. They're actually a TV tuner for digital TV, to put digital TV on the computer. But the little chipsets in there are that good and that cheap. They're being repurposed for all sorts of things, including flight trackers. But you can use one as a scanner. And here, you know, you can get them for like 15 quid. I think we're out of stock at the minute. I'm not sure if we would be getting stock back in. But if you're good with a computer, you can get some free software, buy a 15 quid dongle, stick it in, have a play, and depending on the software, you can get functions that are getting towards the functions of top scanners and further functions that scanners can't even do. So, little tip there, if you're really good with computing, 15 quid, get yourself a dongle and have a little play. And search RTL SDR on Google. So recommendations. Right, if you type in scanners on eBay, I don't know if I've loaded this again. Oh, terrible. This is why my video should be scripted. I need a script because I'm waffling on. I've done like 36 minutes already. It's probably waffle. But anyway, so recommendations. If you've gone to eBay, type in radio scanner, right, you're going to get confronted with all sorts of rubbish. And some of them, like these cheap Chinese radios, like Bafeng or Bofeng or however you pronounce it, radios, you're going to think, oh, I can get a radio here for 20 quid. However, remember this bit. This is the bit that you need it to receive, and you will find it don't receive, and those are FM only. So you'll be here, and you haven't got 98% of your airband. You can't even hear because it's their own modulation, and you can't even hear it because it's totally off frequency. So when you are looking for a radio, you want to make sure that at the very minimum, if you're interested in military aviation, it has to cover those parts of the radio spectrum at a minimum. Nice, and then it'd be nice if they cover VHF and a bit of HF, but that's what you're looking for, and you've got to make sure it does AM and FM. So don't get these cheap Chinese radios. The only circumstances where a cheap Chinese radio can listen to Airband is if you go to a big airport, like I think Manchester does this. For their little cars that are on the ground, they rebroadcast what is happening on their Airband on the tower frequency onto another frequency that these radios are capable of listening to. But that's very selective. You will only hear the tower frequency, and only on those airports in the country that rebroadcast them for their ground cars on there. You're not going to hear anything on a Bafeng at Coningsby. Right. Well, pretty much. A bit of an oversimplification. I recommend the Uniden scanners. Now, Uniden scanners are great. There's basically two types of scanners, a base scanner and a mobile scanner. So a base scanner, you plug it into the mains. You can plug it into a giant aerial mounted on the top of your house for the serious hobbyist. But of course, you can't quickly take that out, strap it to your belt, and go visit an airfield. So you need a mobile scanner. Now, the UBC 3500 XLT is my recommendation for the mobile scanner, handheld scanner. I'm going to recommend the UBC 3500 XLT. It is computer programmable. It's got all these parts of the spectrum in it. It's AM and FM, everything. It will do you fine. And then the base version is pretty much the 15X. Now, Uniden have lots of different models of these scanners, depending where in the world they are. They've got European versions, US versions, and they've all got different models and things like that. But these, I've put these because these are the most common models available. Handheld and base. However, the 3500 XLT is discontinued The last time I saw it on sale at a shop was when Maplin was around, and Maplin have gone bust. They're not here anymore. So they're difficult to get hold of. You're talking about 150 quid on eBay, if and when they appear. But they are a really good scanner, worth 150 quid in my opinion. 15X is probably, I don't know, you might be 250 quid. So a cheaper alternative for a handheld scanner is the UBC 125 XLT. Now that hasn't got the advanced systems and groups memory architecture. It's in banks, but it will receive all of that and all of that you need. So it can be a good compromise, and they are easier to get hold of than the old 3500 XLT. Just for OCD, will spell handheld properly. So that is a good one. However, there is a however, do not buy these. I think it's a 75 XLT, UBC 75 XLT. You'll see these if you whack them in eBay radio scanner. You'll probably see some 75s, and you'll think, "Oh, they're a lot cheaper." The 75s, I believe, are only VHF, so they do not do UHF. So if you're interested in military, like we all are, because this is why you're here, this is why you're on my channel, this is why you know me, then you're going to want UHF as well. So there's a bit of a pitfall. Don't fall into the Uniden 75 XLT trap. Loads of other brands available. Icom, they're a really good manufacturer of radios up and down the world, and you'll find Icom radios in half the planes that you fly around in. Alinco is another one. Yaesu, Realistic, that's the old Radio Shack. So Realistic is the UK version of the old Radio Shack stuff, which is American, and they were sold in the UK in the Tandy shops. So some of them are quite good. Brecom, there's another one, Whistler, which is another arm of Uniden, and your Pitaroo. The things with like the Uterpes, the Grecoms, the Radio Shacks, you'll find a lot of old models out there, and they're not capable of 8.33 kilohertz spacing. Now, it's not a deal breaker, because you can listen to 8.33 kilohertz space channels on the old 25 kilohertz spacing, but it's going to be difficult, and it's not going to be great quality, and your bandwidth can be so wide that you can pull in other frequencies rarely as well, and you're not going to be able to type in the frequency that you want. It will change your frequency that you've typed in to the nearest 25 kilohertz space channel, and it will go with that. So personally, I make sure that the spacing on your scanner is 8.3 kilohertz compatible. So just to round up, what you are looking for in a radio scanner is a base scanner or a mobile scanner, depending on what you want to use it for. Okay, you are looking for that it covers at least that portion of the radio spectrum, and it will say frequency allocations. You make sure it's AM and FM, but if it's a scanner that covers that, it's going to have AM and FM in it. That's fine. Ideally, you want it to be compatible with 8.33 kilohertz spacing. And then in an ideal world, computer programmable. Okay. And then pretty much everything else you can just pick and choose as you go on. But that is your essential specification that we can make from this video. Like I say, if you go onto eBay and you start seeing radio scanner at 25 quid, that is not going to work. Your budget for a radio scanner needs to be above £100, I would say. And that's just me coming off the top of my head. But if you start seeing radios under £100, they're not going to have all the things you necessarily want. You are going to get some good deals. You might get a decent 50 quid realistic, second hand. They're old scanners, but it's not going to have your 8.3 kilohertz spacing, so I'd advise maybe you stick to stuff like that. Okay, antennas. Yes, antenna questions. This could be a whole video on itself. So, reputable bands: Diamond, Watson, Nagoya, Moonraker. They are good brands of antennas. However, in the antenna market, there are a lot of fakes out there, and that can be very hard to distinguish between real and fake. And I certainly know people that have bought them off eBay and they've stuck them on the radio, and their radio is dead because the antenna's a useless bit of plastic. So my recommendation would be a Watson antenna I would buy it from CPC Farmel. That would be my recommendation. Other shops are available. I'm not advertising CPC. Other shops are available. Broadsword, Darren Shields. He makes his own antennas. Broadsword antennas. If you go on Facebook, Broadsword antennas. Now, they're not pretty. They are homemade antennas. However, they are very cheap and they perform very well. And Darren is a very nice person. I have one of his antennas. I won't tell you how it compares to my Watsons because my tests were rubbish, not very scientific. But I can safely say they are up there with the Watsons, in the same league as the Watsons. So you could get an antenna from Darren, homemade, for like £5 on one of his offers, or you could pay 20 quid plus £5 postage from CPC Farnell. So well worth considering Darren Shields Broadsword antennas. Right, last note, make sure your antenna is rated for the frequencies you want. Different antennas do different frequencies, so just make sure that it does, at the very minimum, those. Okay, so that's a rundown on radio scanners. I think I've covered everything I want to cover, but as usual, questions in the comments. I'll get back to you. Send us a message, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, and I'll do my best to answer them. But this is an introduction to scanner, what scanners do, what specifications you want, some of the pitfalls, and even a tip about how to do it cheaply if you're really into your computing. So I hope you enjoyed the video. It's been unscripted, so I've been waffling a lot. But yeah, they're my videos, so there we go. Right, everyone, take care. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you found it useful, and see you in the next video.